That's the reason why maybe Set and Galio would be the most, and Set as well, would be the most contested pick in this series.
Well, let's go ahead and get ourselves into draft. Taipei J team going to be on your blue side, AHQ on the red, and already seeing some, again, targeted, directed bans actually coming out here from Taipei J team. Not going to see the Zoe come out from Uniboy, but we do see the Galio, the Twisted Fate Omo being banned out against Nesty.
Yeah, it's a bit unfortunate for J-Team because I think those are definitely the picks that he has had the most success on. If I was J-Team right now, I would probably be looking for something like a Control Mage for Nasty, maybe even the Silas that he's had pretty decent results on. This is a big one. Caitlyn being open is quite a surprise to me, especially for AHQ as well, because they've shown priority on the champion. It was the only champion that allowed them to take a game off PSG Talon as well, so I think they should realize how important this champion is. Probably setting up to play Ashe again for Wako.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Nesty's presence itself just really gives HQ no room to ban out that Caitlyn and just focusing on those 3 bans against Nesty. And now what does HQ decide to pick up? Either a comfortable AD carry for Wako at the bottom side of the map, which is the typical Jin pick whenever they have to see this Caitlyn at the opposite end.
Well, maybe just not expecting that Lil V would be the one to actually play the Caitlyn, because Lil V, his champ pool is arguably a little bit weird compared to what we've seen of a lot of bot laners here in the PCS, but like we mentioned, Jin getting locked in here for Wako, and Uniboy actually going to be the first one to show his pickup. It's actually going to be that Orianna, another takeaway from Nesty.
Yeah, blind pick mid in the current meta is pretty stable. There are not too many things that you're afraid of when you're blind picking Orianna, especially against someone like Nasty, who you could say doesn't really have the champion pool to hard punish a champion like Orianna, which is very stable, very safe in general in the laning phase. So J-Team as well, right? You mentioned Lil V's champion pool. He's been playing a lot of Senna, which I think is pretty unique in the PCS. Not too many ADCs pick it up, typically favoring Aphelios or Ezreal instead. This time around though, Caitlyn and Morgana, it's a very oppressive bot lane duo, and I'm quite interested to see what AHQ have prepared for it.
The thing is, Morgana can still be flexed on towards Nesty's side of things because Nesty did pick it once, but there is the PCS special Renekton again being on Rest's side.
This disappoints me because Rest is okay, I'm going to argue Rest is maybe one of those players that I am excited to see him on something like a carry. Because, again, we mentioned during our review show, he had, what, the 4th highest damage in the league per minute out of a top laner. That's rather impressive. We are, though, going to be seeing this Gnar matchup that's been kind of popping up, and we'll see how well Ziv is able to handle this. Again, Gnar is sometimes considered a mini counter into that Renekton, but as far as performance goes in the PCS, it hasn't been able to take over the lane completely.
Yeah, so Ziv is an old school player. He's played this matchup a ton of times. I'm pretty sure I've even seen him playing this at Worlds before. So the Gnar to Renekton matchup, well, if you're looking at it purely as a lane matchup, of course it's Gnar favored, but the problem comes when you have to navigate Gnar in team fights as well as skirmishes, where you have to manage his rage bar, you have to time it with the TP, sync it with your team as well. So there are a lot of things to consider when you're playing Gnar into Renekton. It's not so simple as in you just TP into a team fight and you're a monster, you can Mega Gnar immediately. So that's probably why some teams have been having problems with the Gnar. But I think first, for a team like AHQ, especially when you've got the tools to set up for and engage with the Jin call as well, I don't think the Gnar is going to be too problemsome outside of laning phase. I'm just curious as to if Ziv is gonna build purely into the laning phase with like an on-hit build, or if he's gonna build a bit more tanky and like perform his role on the team.
Yeah, very true. I agree. Not a lot of reliability when it comes to the Gnar. Normally, people would fall back into the Wukong or Kennen if they want really strong 5v5 reliable team fights. But yeah, Thresh being taken out of the table, therefore, most likely Nautilus will still be open for Ysera. But if they do want a better or a safer lane, I suppose Lulu will be the next best choice.
All right, so we're seeing this Lulu kind of pop up from AHQ over the last 2 days as being one of those main teams to actually pick it up themselves. We do see, though, from Taipei J team, a Pantheon getting locked in, and the Zac once more coming out from Hana. I wasn't impressed with it the last time we got to see it out of the team, but hey, if it's not broke, I guess don't fix it. This also means they have, I guess, a little bit of flexibility when it comes to the mid lane support. Again, we have seen plenty of Pantheon support come into the league, but you mentioned global presence for Nesty. That more or less looks like a pick that will work well for him.
Yeah, so what you're looking at across the board right now on the side of J Team is they're gonna look to put a lot of pressure bot side with the Caitlyn Morgana. The reason they couldn't pick Nautilus there, they probably didn't want to pick Nautilus on the side of AHQ, was it's just too oppressive to play into a Caitlyn Morgana. So they're looking to get an Enchanter as well who can kind of fight for some wave control, who can try to like tin the wave a bit. But what we're seeing on the side of J Team is they want to pressure bot side super hard and they want to go for dives. They have the Pantheon, they have the Zac, they're gonna look to just kill Wako and Azera over and over again. Maybe TP down Renekton a couple times as well. Team fights are looking pretty simple as well. You have pretty immobile carries in Orianna and Jhin. I guess Jin's gonna be running at 700 MS this game, so maybe not, but they're all just gonna try and look to jump on the back line of AHQ.
Yeah, I think that's the reason why we see that the composition on red side at least looks a little bit like similar to a protect the carry composition with a ton of shields and disengage to work with, but still a good balance of engage on AHQ side.
And plenty of Wombo combo. Of course, you can get that Gnar in with the Mega Gnar ultimate, Jarvan Cataclysm with that Shockwave, and it can be devastating onto some of those key members. We'll see, though, whether or not AHQ is going to be able to pull this off. Of course, this is our first and second seed when it comes to the summer standings. Omo, thank you for joining us here in the draft. We'll see you during the post game, but for now, we're going to go ahead and load on into the Rift for Game 1 of our Sunday matchup.
Welcome to Summoner's Rift.
And off we go. I didn't know they had a cat in the studio, but apparently we now have a cat in the studio. I don't know where that's coming from, but looked like we were going to have some shenanigans come out from Taipei J Team instead, though. HQ not really sending anyone down into that bot lane. Yes, going back to what I said during the game intro, of course, this is our first and second seed taking on one another. But Riku, this is not the situation we expected these two teams to be facing off. We expected, you know, upper bracket final where we'd see one of these teams looking to qualify for Worlds. Instead, one of these teams' Worlds run comes to an end today. The other still needs to fight their way into that final up against the loser between Machi and PSG come next weekend.
Yeah, exactly. It looks very, I think most especially for J Team, because especially when we look at their spring run, they ended up in 7th place at the spring regular season and played the playoffs as an experimentation ground where they put Kiarb in the mid lane, put Nesty back in the support role. And this time around, though, they had an amazing start, had that first seed, and is able to, you know, best these top teams at the top 3 from spring. You got you got HQ, you got PSG Talent, you got Machi as well. And now they're playing for that world slot, and it will be really tragic having such an amazing start only to get eliminated by HQ, part of that top 3.
Yeah, it comes down to, you know, team consistency, I guess, in a best of series. The adaptability. We mentioned, you know, Talon. Originally this team, they were able to find their footing, and unlike what we've seen of AHQ and J Team, there's times where I feel like we see a degradation of playstyle when it comes to these best of series, especially from AHQ. AHQ series yesterday, we're going to be very upfront and honest. It was not a pretty series. That was very much a Berjaya Dragon series that they could have actually taken, and HQ could have been eliminated by the 8th seed.
And HQ has been in that situation back in spring too. When they went up against Alpha in the best of 3 series, they lost 1 game, and there are constantly times where HQ would seem lost, and that primary factor would be in the early phases of the game, where most of the time they would lose that and will not have the usual foothold. But look at that, Ysera getting poked out immediately by this duo of Lil V and Woody.
Yeah, he mentioned by Omo they didn't want to go for a Nautilus because this is oppressive. Well, if you still get netted by a bind from the Morgana, you're going to get rooted for about 7 to 10 seconds and then lose the majority of your health if you are a Lulu. So gotta be a little bit more careful there from Ysera, but this is where we expect a lot of the action to take place once we hit level 6 with the majority of our lanes. Of course, we're looking for Nesty to look for that dive toward the bot side. Hana, I want to see him to be a little bit more active compared to what we saw of his Zac play in the previous week, personally. But again, yeah, they want to try and get this Caitlyn, get this Morgana online, and try and get as much turret plates into Lilvi as possible before that 14-minute mark.
Yeah, let's see whether or not they are able to replicate that performance, though, as the junglers will meet and butt heads.
Oh yeah, actually forced the flash out, gets the buffer on the flag drag as Nesty came around as well, so that's going to be the flash down on the Pantheon for the flash of the Jarvan.
Yeah, so far looking pretty good for Type AJ team here at the early phases of the game. Is able to get a good foothold on both Riverside, but Kongye is able to get both of these scuttlers, so that is a good start at least. Uniboy, though, having that spellbook, is able to be a little bit more safe carrying that cleanse at least, and will revert later on towards the teleport.
Well, you see both of these main carries for AHQ have to run cleanse because, again, you're going up against a Morgana. If there's going to be a bind landing during team fight, you're going to get trapped, and then you're just going to get obliterated by that Caitlyn damage. So have to be rather safe, and likely means for Uniboy, we won't be seeing him use anything else unless he's forced to expend that cleanse, which, again, you're in a Pantheon lane. We do expect Nesty to be getting up into his face. Yeah,
and I think exactly that, as HQ is able to fight back with the tools that they have, but we're gonna be seeing another gank at bot side.
Black Shield used rather early. Unfortunately for Kongye, he does not have that flash to get in range, so they'll be able to be just fine. Looks like, though, they just want to try and get some pressure up as Wako watches all his minions get taken by Ysera off 1Q, as they're just looking to get on back and get their first item component.
Yeah, going back to how safe the lanes are, not only due to the cleanse, but also come level 6, you've got the wild growth, and if in case things get too dicey, you've got the shockwave for any sort of counter attack in towards that dive later on. So there's a little bit of safety, I suppose, but going back to Omo's statement on that Gnar, there's a little bit of that unreliability when it comes to managing your rage bar. Sometimes the teleport timings will not be in your favor, and you're not going to be ready for any sort of possible beautiful 5-man play on this Gnar.
Yeah, I'm gonna hold my tongue a little bit here, but again, Civ should be a veteran himself. I expect him to be good on managing his rage bar, but I think the couple times we have seen it during summer, there's been some lackluster attempts, so hopefully he's been able to shore it up, as I find it interesting if he's not going to be able to do that himself. He was the one that was calling out Nesty yesterday during the post-game interview, saying, hey, you know what, get ready for a 5-ban in mid lane. We better see what your champion pool's like. But if he's not able to perform on some of these niche picks like the Gnar, I think it's a little bit disappointing. As we see Kongye and Hana, once again, trying to contest over this scuttle. You do see Nesty consistently being able to push in that mid lane up against that Orianna at the very least until Uniboy gets his first item. Allows him to get prio and is allowing him to answer alongside Hana when Kongye is spotted out.
Yeah, good thing for Uniboy, you have a decent amount of wave clear with your Q dissonance on this Orianna at least, but damage-wise, of course, Nesty at this point of the game will definitely beat you to it. And again, you can't exactly try to burst Nesty at this point because he's a Pantheon, and is therefore able to trade more properly, especially when you're against these 2v2, such as this Jarvan and as well as this Orianna. And that's the reason why Kongye is always afraid, and that's the reason why Hana is able to at least put some pressure, remove that flash. Therefore, without the flash, not a lot of beautiful flash, flag and drag that Kongye is able to create for the other lanes.
Well, other than, the little contest over Scuttle here and there, we just haven't seen a whole lot of action, and that's kind of what we expected. But now with Hana hitting that level 6 on that Zac, we're kind of expecting now, all right, we're going to get ourselves consistent dives coming out. Also got to give credit over to Rest there, as unfortunately just not able to get that combo off onto Ziv. Is starting to fall a little bit behind in CS, but not end of the world, as being only about a wave down in this matchup is kind of a blessing here for Rest.
Yeah, definitely. Rest able to get at least that Ninja Tabis to be able to. Okay, Hana diving in.
Again, a lot of aggression. Ace the Hole is going to connect onto Kongye, but it looks like they are going to be successful in actually getting this invade off. We'll see whether or not Hana's able to get out with his life, a Black Shield and a Binding. Pretty much sure that that's going to be the case, as Wako, even though he gets a snare, is going to be able to do a whole lot, and that priority from bot lane is able to help net J-Team a quick invade, and now we might even see Hana continue going in as he gets himself another quick camp and seals that one away from Kongye.
And with that, look at that, Kongye not having a lot of space, but Woody's nearby.
You got Uniboy also coming nearby, has that Shockwave available. In comes that Cataclysm, aiming for that Shockwave to see finally coming on through. First blood goes on over to Wako off the Cataclysm, and there's that combo. Resto wants to enter in onto the fray, has to use his flash to get himself back to safety. Ziv also teleporting, but he is only just a mini Gnar with no Mega Gnar available. And just like that, it's going to be 2 kills going on over to AHQ, and both of them going on to this Jhin, so Wako does not fall behind in this matchup against the Caitlyn.
Yeah, it is definitely a great start for AHQ, able to turn things around at least from Hana's constant aggression. Yes, Woody and the rest of the squad from Type A J Team is nearby, but that Cataclysm really zoned out a lot away from J Team, and therefore you see that at least AHQ is able to get 2 kills on the Jhin as well.
Yeah, I was kind of worried. I didn't see Uniboy's Shockwave in there. The particles are really hard to see during that fight, and I was kind of wondering, when is Uniboy going to Shockwave? Was able to get it off, and that's kind of that wombo combo we mentioned. You get a Cataclysm down, you get the Shockwave in onto multiple members, and it doesn't really matter if you have a Black Shield. It's going to not be able to soak up all that damage, and just like that, now AHQ find themselves a slight advantage toward the bot side of the map, helping kind of bridge that gap between the Caitlyn and Jhin when it comes to CS. But J-Team not slowing down, continuing up the pressure on the bot side of the map, are going to be able to net the first dragon of the game.
J-Team still rewarded for, just as you mentioned, having priority and control for at least the bottom side of the map. Even though they gave away 2 kills towards Wako, Lil V is still practically ahead in the game at the moment, and they are able to get that first dragon for themselves. And yeah, it's off to a great start, as you know, the boots are coming in for at least to be a little bit more defensive in towards the lane. See Nesty with the Merc Treads and Kabi's on towards Rest as well to survive a little bit more. Lil V though still looking towards to get a little bit more platings or start to get more plates to get even more.
Well, I think right now, if your rate of getting turret plates is 0 at almost 11 minutes so far, this Caitlyn hasn't been able to really do her job alongside a Morgana that's supposed to be a relentless pushing lane, and we just haven't seen Hana do what we expected alongside Nesty having that global pressure on the Pantheon to look for dives consistently. The fact that Nesty actually hasn't really been able to go for roams and currently sits now 20 CS behind Uniboy doesn't spell a whole lot of good here for J-Team. On top of that, Ziv, just with his pressure in top lane into the Cataclysm from Konga, is going to be able to catch out Hana into another Shockwave combo, and there you go, Ziv now is on the board.
And the thing is, it's something like AHQ. Okay, thank you very much for that leash. Hana was a little bit chunked out already by the Rift Herald, and his passive is still not online. And with that said, AHQ is able to reap their rewards, being a little bit more patient, finding the correct timing, and just going all in. And the thing is, unfortunately, Hana is not able to escape, and it's not like Rest can do anything as a Renekton to escape that. And especially Woody is not around. And you mentioned Lil V, unable to get early plates. It's only due to the fact that you've got Ysera on this Lulu to help out push the wave, and therefore not an opening for Caitlyn to do Caitlyn things. And
also note onto your mini-map here, look at AHQ. They've actually been able to get some decent vision down into the jungle of J-Team, and unfortunately there for J-Team, they can't do a whole lot. Meanwhile, mid lane, you saw a dive come through, but Uniboy is able to get himself back to safety, did have to use his cleanse, but does still have heal up and available from his spell book, so that Orianna isn't pressured enough, and there you go, Luden's also now coming online and going to have second rank into his ultimate, hopefully in time for the next big team fight.
Still 2 minutes on the clock for the next dragon to spawn, and the Rift Herald has just been acquired by AHQ. There is not a lot of objectives for Type A J-Team to fight or force certain objectives off of the map, other than if they want to set a dive elsewhere. But so far, they tried with AHQ, for Uniboy rather, in the mid lane. Unfortunately, did not work, to the fact that he wasn't even used. And again, bot side though, still being very stable, with Lulu, this Lulu pick really helping out Wako in the bot side of the map.
So there you are, Wako sitting just comfortably fine. It also nets them a Rift Herald off the tail end of that quick pick, and with that too, AHQ can again just exert some pressure. On top of that, Ziv is going to be rather happy himself, being able to pick up a quick kill on that rotation. The Gnar's in a nice spot too, and To be honest, it just kind of feels like AHQ are the ones that are just having the better roams. They're kind of doing what J-Team we expect them to be doing in these matchups, and it just hasn't panned out well. Rest, though, getting a little aggressive, wants to try and put that over. Hana is nearby. Civ, with no flash available, is going to get dove here, and finally, we get to see Nestea make his mark on the map as he picks up his first kill of the game.
Perfect timing. I believe Civ will have flash up in about 5 or 6 seconds, but unfortunately though, with 3 people diving in towards the tower, even with flash, it might be just a dire situation, and Ziv would have wasted the flash anyways. And the question is, what does AHQ decide to exchange off of that kill? We were looking forward for Type A J-Team to finally do something, and they did it.
Unfortunately, you saw Shelly was used in mid lane, but just after the turret plates went down. As we'll take another quick look here, Civ with just not a whole lot of vision for himself to work with. We kind of mentioned AHQ had good vision, well, it just expired, and there you go, there's that opening, that opportunity for Nestea to finally use this ultimate.
Exactly, a lot of chain CC. You start with the Renekton, and then Hana with the bounce, and then Nestea with the easy point and click stun. And with that, I mean, it's Ziv. He's most likely very used to being, you know, ganked at so many times at the top side of the map. I think the good news is that it's only just once, as the game is being propelled a little bit faster with that Rift Herald being used in the mid lane, and towers being traded at bot side towards top side instead.
And on top of that, though, we do have to kind of come back to this bot lane. We kind of expected the Caitlyn to be the one that's able to get herself some turret plating. Well, was not actually the case. Wako was actually able to knock down his tower first, so as far as hyper accelerating a Caitlyn, it didn't end up panning out for J-Team, and now you have to really rely on Rest to be the one to help carry some of these fights early. Civ, though, with some good management of his Rage Bar, is in a prime position to use that ultimate when this fight does break out. Uniboy also level 11, second point into ultimate. Some good spikes here for AHQ. Engage comes out from Hana, instantly snare. In comes that Shockwave, able to find onto one. Cataclysm is down, Civ into Meganar, but Kong just gets immediately bursted down. Wako trying to kite back as long as possible.
Whoa.
A 3-man Gnar ultimate, but they only find one stun. Hana gets popped into his passive. Wako, though, finds the kill, and now J-Team are the ones that have to try and clean up the pieces. Uniboy finds one. Ysera gets taken down once again, though, by Rest, as the Renekton is able to escape through the top side of the jungle.
Wako
will get hunted down by Civ. Lil V, though, has remained untouched the entire fight and is able to get some damage back onto Wako. Teleport coming out, but it's going to get interrupted. Rest gets taken down. And for AHQ, 3 members are able to pick up of J-Team as they lose 2, but do not get themselves... Actually, Hana was able to steal away that Drake, so in all honesty, it's kind of an even trade.
Yeah, that was such a long fight, as I believe it was still Kanye at the sacrifice of his life. He's the one who was able to dive and trap 2 people on towards that Cataclysm. It looked really, really solid for AHQ at the latter half of this fight, especially when Ziv is able to still live, is able to get that 3-man push. But the thing is, with AHQ, I feel like they had 2 different plans. Wako wanted to attack Woody, and Ziv and Uniboy wanted to pursue Rest. But Wako realizes, oh wait, I'm all alone. Let's just go back instead. So it was a little bit risky. Good thing there's not a lot of big punish for Wako on that instead. And AHQ is able to reap the rewards by still canceling that teleport against Rest and get another extra kill on top of the dragon that they've just acquired.
Yeah, apologies. I said his steal came in from Hana. They actually got that Mount Drake earlier on during the game, so HQ now tie up the dragon stacks. Felt like, though, that fight had a lot more opportunity for HQ, and we just didn't see it. You saw there Kanye, he got himself onto 3 members, but Uniboy decided to use that Shockwave only onto Rest, and unfortunately wasn't really able to net a whole lot. And Civ, that Meganar ultimate, was used in the river, but he was a bit further away from the wall than he probably anticipated, and he was only able to get just that one little stun onto Hana. So again, some team fight execution needs to be cleaned up here for AHQ, but they got the right fundamentals in mind, and doesn't look like they're looking to ease up on the paces. Again, getting themselves set up for the second Rift Herald of the game.
This might be the next big fight that we're looking forward to. Again, previously AHQ has won that. They are definitely confident to do so. All of these key ults are even online, such as the Cataclysm, Shockwave, and even the Wild Growth as well. But we're looking at towards, I believe, Kongya having to look for a reset. So J-Team actually has the first dibs on towards this Rift Herald.
interesting to see here from Kongya. Ended up just wanting to go back to the nice bow. That does mean, though, that Rift Herald is going to be started up. We do see the helpings, though, being requested by Kongya, who wants to try and get in onto this fight. Civ has his Narbar at a good spot, too, again, getting set up before this fight. Kongya now just coming in through his jungle. Now going to see that Rift Herald Eye get popped here quite shortly. And now J-Team, unfortunately, the timing's a little bit unfortunate. Coming around towards the side, Kongya able to steal away Shelly. Civ has himself in Mega Gnar and is just using that as a diversion, prevent J-Team from deciding to pull the trigger on a fight, instantly come in mid and try and crack open that first tier tower.
Very strange coming from Taipei J-Team, and very, again, props to AHQ, props to Kongya for putting a lot of trust on AHQ for them to buy some time. You mentioned Kongya is able to get that Night Spell at least from the back, and because of the pushing power coming from AHQ combined with that Orianna, it was a little bit very easy for AHQ for them to zone away the carries, knowing that only Rest and Hana was there to actually attack the Rift Herald, so it was a little bit slow. And we saw Nesty just hide in the brush. Normally you have to wait for Hana's engage or Nesty to pull the trigger, but we didn't see that at all to rattle AHQ.
I saw there Shelly actually wasn't really needed for that first tier tower in mid. Ends up only just dying into the minion wave, but nonetheless, first tier tower in mid lane going down allows AHQ to get that ward line into the Taipei J-Team jungle a little bit easier, and with that they can spot out rotations if Nesty is trying to look for a play, and if Hana is looking for a slim shot to get into one of these lanes. So for AHQ, they're kind of set up into a nice spot. You do have to worry, though, that of Taipei J-Team, Lil V, even though we didn't see him get a bunch of turret plating, has been farming up a storm on this Caitlyn, already 200 CS at that 20-minute mark, keeping himself consistent at 10 CS per minute. And that itself gets a little bit scary when you consider he's already picked up that Storm Razor, goes into a second Zeal item, and likely will go into Infinity Edge next, and that's when he's going to have a heap amount of damage.
Exactly, when you top it off with the safety that Woody provides on this Morgana as well, it might be a little bit difficult to actually try to eliminate Lil V right off the bat. And yeah, looking at towards the itemization, I suppose, towards Uniboy, on his way towards a really nice Rabadon, so a lot of raw damage.
There you go.
Ooh,
Shockwave, though, lands
damage.
in onto Woody. Woody, though, is able to survive, goes in the stopwatch. Meanwhile, Nesty onto the back line, as well as Rest enter in onto the fight. Ysera gets taken down low, and Kongya will get taken on out, and in comes Hana once again on that engage, and it just looks like from AHQ, they need that hero play. Civ tries to make it happen. Unfortunately, though, he'll get taken down, and the passive from the Zac is able to keep Hana alive. Rest with another stun, carrying on this Renekton once more, and Lil V online, and now for AHQ, this bot lane has been corralled toward the bot side of the map, and it looks like the ace is going to finally come on through as Taipei J-Team are able to strike at AHQ.
Tragic for AHQ because they were really tunnel visioned on eliminating Woody, only to get punished by that collapse from Taipei J-Team. And this is where this composition shines. They came at different directions, therefore AHQ didn't have a good position to actually take this 5v5.
I kind of have to wonder, you know, is using two ultimates onto the support Morgana when Lil V is right next to him. Now this Caitlyn sits at a 5-0-0 record on your main feed. You can see that that is going to be Baron taken by Taipei J-Team outside of a Miracle Seal from Kongya. We'll see if he makes it on over the wall, jumps into the pit. It's not going to happen. And there you go. Taipei J-Team, they pick up 4 kills as well as the execute on Ysera and also get a Baron because of this fight.
Yeah, amazing punish by Taipei J-Team. And I mean, for HQ, Ysera tried his best to just at least get that kill on towards the tower, not an additional, you know, gold on J-Team's pocket, but unfortunately, they even get the Baron off of that, and therefore they're going to be definitely happy about that, considering the fact that J-Team lost the initial fight in that Dragon 5v5. HQ, though, will get another Dragon in exchange, but it's looking pretty dicey if they keep doing that, of over-investing their resources towards eliminating the support.
Yeah, you gotta kill Lil V at this point. There's no reason to be trying to use 2 ultimates, your 2 engage ultimates and damage dealing ultimates onto Woody. Just save that for Lil V, because Lil V now, disgusting like we mentioned, is going to have this Infinity Edge on his next back, and you saw the damage numbers he was able to output during that last team fight, and still maintaining this CS advantage over Wako. it gets a bit dicey, like you mentioned, and now AHQ on the back foot for the next 2 minutes is Baron buff in hand for Taipei J team, and maybe another dive gonna come out from Hana. Has that slingshot available, vision being denied, but instead they're just happy sieging in onto the second tier tower.
Yeah, playing a little bit safe on J Team's side, I suppose, and having to use that slingshot for any sort of pressure for AHQ to be forced to just fall back and just guard the inhibitor towers instead. And with this Baron buff, there's a lot of value being taken out of this, as that's 2 towers down and 1 in the making at the moment for at least the bottom side of the map. And even though they do have a good and decent amount of wave clear in the form of this Orianna, there's still a lot of respect to how much dive J Team has.
And on top of that, there's so much freestanding gold on the map that now Lil V, he gets to go back into base, almost finishes off that Infinity Edge, and instead also picks up a stopwatch. So now that Caitlyn has a little bit of extra survivability when it comes to this full engage from AHQ. And for AHQ, they're going to have to really hope that Taipei J team are the ones that end up messing up on a fight. And poor Wako, he just wants to get this red buff for himself and finally gets to reset it back. But now it seems like for AHQ, you're trying to turtle and hope that you can find a misstep on Lil V, a misstep out of possibly rest, and maybe you can try and take an odd-man fight.
And that's the thing, though. If as the game progresses, not only Lil V gets a little bit stronger, you've got the tanks getting a little bit more tankier too, with Hana having Warmugs already intact. And for Nesty, maybe Pantheon does fall off a little bit more, but that's the reason why you have the Caitlyn to pick up the pieces and be that more reliable when it comes to that damage source of things. And there's a teleport. They are, look at those trap line. AHQ really has no way of contesting these towers, and they have to watch these fall one by one.
There you go. That's going to be the 6th tower of the game. And like that, it's a 4,000 Baron buff power play coming out from Taipei J team. Nets them now a 6,000 gold lead overall. And spikes are online for them. You got second items coming through for them squad. The double black cleaver, and not 100% sure about that one. But hey, you still have it at the very least for some survivability on this Pantheon. And yeah, we'll see whether or not HQ can maybe try and force Infernal Soul as a win condition, as they are only 2 dragons away, but they've lost so much control of the map that I find it very difficult to imagine that they are going to be even able to get close enough to this dragon pit right as it spawns.
Yeah, good thing, a little bit of good news, I suppose, for HQ, since they got the first 2 dragons of the game. That takes J team at least further away into that soul point at least, so HQ can buy some time. Elder Drake, time being bought as well. Therefore, they can just look into farming and see whether or not J team looks into another Baron. Then HQ is able to try with that 5v5 once more. But again, the biggest story here for their fights is whether or not they're able to reach Lil V. Do they have backline access? Kwangye and Ziv will carry those roles. But just as you mentioned, has a stopwatch, and you have that black shield as well coming from Moody. And as the game progresses, more defensive items will be on the board for Lil V as well.
You also saw there that gold being shown there on the table below. Lil V had 12,000 gold.
Whew.
Over Wako's only 9,000, so that's almost a full legendary item on top of Lil V on this Caitlyn. And yeah, question becomes, can you actually catch out Lil V? And when he has a Pocket Morgana, that can be rather difficult. So, we'll see if AHQ are able to do that. We're going to have ourselves next Drake spawning in about 30 seconds. We also have Baron going to be spawning in about a minute, so we'll see whether or not AHQ can maybe possibly look for a trade. But at the moment, it's looking a bit dire, and we'll see what they can do to try and turn around their fortune.
All summoner spells are up for everyone, but as we can see, Taipei J team has conquered the blue portion of HQ's jungle, and now HQ forced to move to the upper portions of the map instead and establish vision for the next big Baron to spawn. As again, Taipei J team is in a very comfortable spot to take this with no contest whatsoever. Therefore, HQ does have some form of trying to deny that. They do have the flag and drag, even if the flash is not going to be available for Kwangye. And as well as a lot of options to make him a little bit more tankier to survive the Baron pit dive with that wild growth at least.
My main concern here now, though, for AHQ, as we mentioned, they could have maybe gone for an Infernal Soul, but because they've lost so much control of the map, you see this vision line on toward the bot side of the river. It's rather difficult for AHQ to really do anything at the moment. They're kind of stuck within their own jungle. They can't push past that river line, and now it becomes that question is, can Kongyu maybe find a Baron Seal? Because J-Team are in prime position to go for it. They will instantly rip it apart when you have a Caitlyn this fed on top of a Bork in your top lane from Rest. And again, it's time for some hero plays here, but it feels like this is J-Team's game to lose at this point.
Exactly, AHQ having a difficult time finding opportunities because even though, let's just say they have potential to get a pick off of somewhere, it's very hard because you've got Rest having teleport, you've got ST having to just ult and just cut your retreat path and just turn things around. And that's the reason why HQ is having to play more defensively and wait for any sort of type A J-Team starting this Baron instead. It's very, very crucial because Hongye might be in trouble. He's fine.
He gets himself to safety there. We saw the idea. Hana was able to spot out that that vision was being taken, but all right. HQ, you're kind of stuck over toward your base, and it feels weird. It feels like we're at that 35-minute point because of how far ahead Lil V's been able to get up into this matchup, and you see that 1,500 on the crit onto this red buff alone, and Kongyu even going that far forward has barely any armor himself. He actually has a decent amount of armor. I'm actually lying there. He got Knight's Vow, Ninja Tabby, and a cloth armor. Yeah, no, Lil V does a lot of damage on this Caitlyn, and those two chunks might be enough to actually convince Type A J-Team to be the ones to actually go ahead and start up the Baron.
Yeah, exactly. They're in a comfortable lead. You got Lil V having to chunk Hongye, one of the tankiest member in the group, I suppose, next to Civ on this Gnar. And Woody, again, with that Ardent Sensor completed, is just going to further empower this Caitlyn. And HQ, that's half HP already on the Baron.
We'll see now. Another control ward goes in. Kongyu gets snared up, though, by that Dark Binding.
Oh, they stopped.
It looks like, though. Side of Type A J-Team, they're the ones that say, all right, we're going to call it quits. Civ is going to have his ultimate. ST getting hyper-aggressive, though. Kind of realizes, all right, maybe not what I wish to do. For Type A J-Team, though, you have an opportunity to go for a fight or even convince her a Baron play, because now Ziv does not have that Mega Gnar available, and it will be on cooldown now for the next 10 seconds if they wish to. They can be the ones that try and force a play now, as Ziv has to go into a side lane and clear out minions.
You can tell Nesty was a little bit antsy to use that ult, just because he's only used it twice so far.
Uniboy, that's a bit too close into the action. Kongyu gets ended up just bashed together with Uniboy. Teleport going to come out from Rest. He's instantly going to get polymorphed, though, and you can see that damage coming on through. Wako able to get himself back to safety. Where is the follow-up, though, from Uniboy? It's a 4-man Cataclysm, and the Shockwave completely misses Uniboy. You can't be landing those like that. Hana survives. Rest gets taken down. Nesty now rejoins in onto the fight, and even when the combo flops from HQ, they are still able to somehow trade 1-for-1.
1-for-1 Renekton versus the Jarvan, and yeah, for Type A J-Team, they do want that additional power from that Renekton, at least from Rest, but yeah, even though the Shockwave completely misses, Wako is still completely healthy. They've already used key ultimates to reach the backline, and that's the reason why Type A J-Team had to concede that fight.
And you start to see now a little bit of some issues coming on through. Hana, he's getting rather aggressive, but Lil V needs to be the one that actually sets up his trap line. And Rest, well, welcome to being a Renekton. You might be ahead at this point, but unfortunately, if you teleport into 4 members, it's not going to be the case. The big crucial mistake, though, was that right there. Uniboy missing his Shockwave, not using it. You saw Nesty trying to save Hana, was able to for a quick second with that teleport, but he will not have that if he wants to try and get some pressure on the outside map. And all right, AHQ able to zone back the Caitlyn, able to find the action where they need to, but still a rather close game and a lot of work still left to be done.
And that is the domino effect that we saw in that fight, because Nesty used his ult early, therefore he had to put that role to Rest aside, which, you know, he doesn't have an Edge of Night, he's going to be instantly polymorphed, and with that, which just means that they have not a lot of options to go towards Wako. And still though, J-Team is still able to get more room to work with to at least get the Dragon, but AHQ will wait for another opportunity for J-Team to pursue this Baron to replicate that success from earlier.
The issue now, though, for AHQ is they put themselves into a situation where Soul Point is available for AHQ on the next Dragon spawn. Ana able to find his target. Lil V able to blow up Wako. Uniboy able to get that wild growth from Ysera. Ysera flashing way over to safety. Rest on that chase. Ziv has his ultimate available. Able to interrupt Ana on the jump. But that will be Wako down, one of your main carries for AHQ, and even with the Wombo combo, you don't have that follow-up damage. It's very difficult to actually take down Taipei J-Team. Ysera gets caught out by the binding. Civ has to go back into Mini Gnar, and Baron going to be started here by Hana alongside Lil V.
Remember, we mentioned, Wako has been a little bit awkward when it comes to his positioning at the mid to later stages of the game, and that's what we saw just now. Hana, very quick to pull on the trigger, removes Wako instantly with Lil V's insane amount of damage, and Hana leaves the pit.
Hana leaves the pit, so Baron still is being occupied by Lil V. He's going to reset. Hana gets taken down low. In comes that heal, though, and Kanye gets taken down by Rest. That's going to be another member of HQ picked off the map. The one saving grace, though, for HQ is they were able to interrupt this Baron, but now have to look for a hero play with Ziv. Has his ultimate available. The Baron pit is the optimal place. Wako has responded, but they are taking an odd man fight. Engage comes out from Hana, able to land the Q onto Ysera, but nothing else. Zach, though, is able to get himself back to safety. Ziv on the bot side is being forced into Mega Gnar by Lil V. And that will be enough actually to convince Taipei J-Team to back off as they reset around Baron.
Ooh, and it all started from here. That was a little bit prolonged, and again, Wako being a little bit brave in the middle of the fight, and Hana very quick to pull the trigger. Lil V finishes the target, and Uniboy actually gets the wild growth, but Ysera actually is the one that body blocked for that Lil V ult. But yeah, I think the reason why, I think the most perplexing thing for me here is that Hana is able to survive with no passive whatsoever, and Kanye had to pay the price for his life for being, a little bit excited, which is understandable because Hana was incredibly low with no passive.
And you saw there, like we mentioned, Hana has been super aggressive here on this pick. That time Uniboy is able to land that shockwave, but again, that heal that comes out from Woody is clutch. Because they are running heal on this Morgana instead of exhaust, so good timing there. Does mean, though, Baron was not taken by either side, but now Taipei J-Team, they can always threaten toward the Infernal Soul to help give them that extra burst of damage, and AHQ now have to worry about two major objectives.
Exactly. Now HQ has to think of two things off of the map, and for a J-Team, they are going to be satisfied with sending one home to the base by just picking one off, and they're capable of doing so because you've got Caitlyn's ult, you've got Nesty to dive into the backline, and again, just replicate what they've done towards Wako. But after that, though, I feel like HQ will be a little bit more careful now, will be a little bit more wary, and Hana has been doing really amazing things in this game so far from, start to finish, despite having that loss at the beginning of the fight, being a little bit aggressive towards Kong's jungle.
So now Rest at least trying to do what he can into his side lane. Do look, though, Lil V fully online on this Caitlyn. Has opted to go into a Bloodthirster, which just gives him a little bit extra survivability. Does mean he's going to be able to chunk out a lot of these squishy targets like Wako, like Ysera, like Uniboy. But won't be able to get through some of the armor stacks that are coming in from Kanya and Ziv. Let's see how that goes. Nesty on the engage, able to jump in immediately onto Wako. Cleanse is there to go get him back to safety. Nesty forced to flash away. Ziv does have Mega Gnar coming over in just a quick moment, but you do see HQ have to reset the fight.
No key ults have been used yet, coming from the side of HQ. For Nesty, though, that's his ult gone already. And, value off of that Shurelius to gain some and bridge that gap, or rather stay away from danger against J-Team's engage. So that's a pretty good win with Uniboy and Wako actually using both of their cleanses. Ysera has that very thick shield. He's going to be fine.
HQ, though, are the ones that get the inside track toward Baron. This is A gutsy play at the very least. This is AHQ pretty much forcing the objective, saying, all right, J-Team, we feel like we can take a fight here in the pit. Woody not able to land the binding. Civ is going to be forced into Meganar shortly, so they have to find a time for this fight. Civ, though, gets instantly chunked. In comes the engage from Hana, able to land onto 2 members. Rest teleports into the fight. AHQ on the wrong side of the map. Waka, though, still leading the charge. Lil B at full health. Turn call going to be popped. Trying to tag Woody, not going to find his target, and all 4 shots miss. Wako needs to hit one of those if they want to try and continue the chase. HQ, though, with Ziv now forced back into Mininar, have to try and restart this process again, but without an ultimate available. Meanwhile, though, Lil V has decided, all right, I'll just go ahead and take Infernal, and now we have the extra buff on the side of Taipei J-Team.
Very risky as well, as their Sister Relia's popped. They're still pursuing Rest, and they are rewarded. But look at the waves, though. It's all in favor of Taipei J-Team. And if AHQ loses this, Taipei J-Team is able to get at least that wave shove. There's a teleport coming from Lil B.
That's going to be teleport coming in from Ziv. You do see Meganar is going to be available again during this fight, but Lil B can just step up. Hana able to find his target. Kanye forced to use his ultimate immediately. Woody finds the kill. Ziv gets onto Lil B though. Wako and the rest of the crew able to shut down this Caitlyn. Now Nesty needs to find himself back to safety. Hana jumps back on in, but this Jhin can actually clean up. And if you're able to take down the Caitlyn on the side of AHQ, you have a chance to get back into this game. It's going to be a 3-for-3. Baron goes to neither side, but Infernal Stole still collected by Taipei J-Team at the end of this.
Shocking. That was an amazing set. Coming from the side of HQ, they're able to at least take advantage of Lil V's positioning because he was a little bit brave due to the fact that he has a lot of damage to dish out and is able to burst out certain key players from HQ. Uniboy flashes in with that dissonance, but it all started here where HQ is able to zone out Rest for having to form a flank somewhere, and HQ is able to punish that. Therefore, this fight in particular was a 4v5 situation. Lil V went back to base, teleported into the lane, took advantage of that movement speed just to see and get a huge chunk of damage at that initial fight.
And you can see for AHQ the scattered mess that is kind of this team fight. Yes, Sarah, Lil V, he's got that black shield. He has no worries, but again, once that dissipates, he's forced to have to back off. You saw a nice flash release coming out, but then Ziv finds his opportunity, gets that big Gnar ultimate, and if Wako's untouched, very similar to a Caitlyn, he's able to turn these fights in. For HQ, that is a saving grace. We'll see whether or not they're able to replicate that, though, on the next objective fight, because it still feels like, though, J-Team have a massive advantage.
Massive advantage still, just as you mentioned, with Lil V still on the board, 814, a lot of defensive items as well, and Infernal Soul on the side of J-Team. And you know what, this game, this Baron in particular has witnessed so many fights happening, and still no one is able to secure that Baron for the second time around. Look at that trap line though, great defense from Taipei J-Team, and HQ's getting zoned away from them.
So yeah, it's going to be popped, we'll see though. 4,000 health back onto the Baron. You saw Kongyu looking to try and step up. Has the ball available. Has that delivery system online. Rest gets caught out toward the side. In goes Kongyu. Not able to find his steal. And in comes Nesty alongside Hana. They find Wako. And even though the wild growth is there, he gets shut down immediately. Ziv going to get taken down before he even goes into Mega. Able to get himself back to safety with that flash. Forced to use his ultimate defensively. But now Taipei J-Team with Baron buff in hand, and minion waves starting to come in through top and mid can start to look to take the base of AHQ.
You were talking about how AHQ, unfortunately, the waves are not in their favor even during the initial fight at the Baron earlier, and J-Team is able to still reap the rewards. That's a lot of death timers for HQ. Kanye gone, Wako gone, and only Uniboy there to try and clear the waves.
You see there's Ziv at least trying to poke what he can. Uniboy though and Ysera have to kind of watch, and you see a 3-man shockwave, but it's way too late. Gets caught out by a binding. In comes that chain CC. Ziv tries to make it happen. It's not the case though. And just like that, Lil B finds himself the triple, and they continue forward. Kanye throwing the body in onto the base. It's too late, AHQ, and game one gonna go in favor of Taipei J-Team as Lil B cements himself at the top of the ADC ladder, taking down Wako at the very last moment.
what an insane and dominant game from J Team. Even though AHQ is able to find an opportunity to eliminate Lil V, it's still not enough as Lil V walks out of his PC. But a good start for Type A J Team against AHQ in this series.
Yeah, and coming back to this, Omo, during that Champs Luck, we kind of mentioned what the game plan was for Type A J Team. We wanted to see that Pantheon get ahead. We wanted to see those roams come through. We didn't necessarily see that, and it just felt like J Team were at least able to stall out the game long enough to allow that Caitlyn to scale back up. And Omo, you're muted. You gotta not mute that bloody mic of yours.
Sorry.
There you are.
My Discord's not. You can hear me now, right?
Yes,
All
I
right,
can
awesome.
hear you, don't worry.
Right, so my mistake. So the game plan was really simple on the side of J Team. Their early game plan, they wanted to use the oppressiveness of Caitlyn, combo with Pantheon pushing his wave, and then the Zek will come down, Renekton will TP down, and then make a play towards bot lane. But the problem is, when they went for the play on Wolves, Hana's Zek went kinda a little bit too deep right there, and they blew so much tempo, they blew so much resources, and the whole early game plan just went out the window. From then on, you saw AHQ kind of pulling the game back in their favor, especially in the mid lane. Uniboy's Orianna got really far ahead of Pantheon, and Pantheon, you know, Nesty's Pantheon kind of was really ineffective in the early mid stages of the game from then on. But they had the late game insurance of Caitlyn with Black Shield, and barring the one mistake at Baron when he got Mega Nart, that kind of worked out. That was enough for them. J Team's combo, they executed it probably only like twice that game. The last Baron team fight was the key one where you actually saw everyone jump in at once, and then Caitlyn was just able to free shoot. That's kind of what you want to see from the start, but it was a bit ineffective until that last team fight. Overall, though, this whole game, Lil V was just putting on the clinic.
Yeah, Lil V looked damn clean. It does help, though, when we saw multiple instances of this, where AHQ are blowing every ultimate onto Woody when Lil V is right next to him. You could just target the Caitlyn at this point, but we just never saw it happen. He's just able to free hit during all these fights.
I'm pretty sure in this fight, AHQ's thought process went something along the lines of, okay, we don't see anyone right now, we only see these two guys in mid lane, let's quickly make a pick and then we can go back to the Inferno Drake. But the problem is when there's a Pantheon and a Zek, they don't really need to be on your screens to come into the team fight. So it's a little bit of a out of sight, out of mind problem, I think, here for AHQ.
Yeah, I think they did tunnel vision a little bit because at this time Orianna was having that double rods, had that Ludens completed, so it was easy to just instantly blow up someone if they spot someone out of the map. And yeah, Lil V, well-deserved MVP.
I think self-explanatory. He did pretty well on this Caitlyn, and we understand why Caitlyn is usually a red side ban, and for AHQ it didn't seem like they were able to handle it. We did feel like, though, they were able to slow down the tempo, but come late game, the target selection, and to be honest, some of the basic wombo combos that we expected out of this team would rarely connect. I was actually very disappointed with Uniboy this game.
Yeah, he seemed like he was playing a little bit too conservatively. There was a fight in the red side jungle where Kongyue flashed in, got a 4-man Jarvan ultimate, Cataclysm on the entire team of J Team. Uniboy had flash. He just chose to stand there, throw the ball on the bush, and he didn't do anything. And I don't know if it's nerves or what it is, but he needs to definitely step up his performance. If your team is setting you up for the wombo combo, you can't be afraid to flash in because Wako will clean up the fight even if you die. You just need to get the big combo off. That's kind of the whole point of the draft. So when you're in this kind of situation and your back is against the wall, you can't be playing too conservatively like what Uniboy was doing here.
Well, we're going to go ahead and take a short break. When we come back, it's going to be Game 2 between Type A J Team and AHQ. We'll see whether or not AHQ can go ahead and try and tie up the series 1-1.
我们将巅峰当起。
CTBC Bank is Taiwan's top financial institution, but we're not stopping there. We're crafting an international brand and already have over 260 outlets in 14 countries. We are by your side, ready to embrace the future.